The early morning light cast long shadows across Olivia Mitchell's kitchen table, illuminating the stack of neatly arranged portfolios and the dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours practicing answers to questions that might determine whether she and Lily could keep their apartment. Her fingers traced the edge of her best designer samples, carefully selected to hide the fact that most of her recent work consisted of quick freelance jobs taken between Lily's school hours and bedtime stories. Rain tapped against the window, gentle but persistent, much like the worry that had followed her since David's accident 2 years ago. The construction site collapse had taken more than her husband. It had stolen their planned future, leaving her to navigate a world that seemed designed for families with two incomes and two parents. Lily's footsteps padded down the hallway, her curls wild from sleep, clutching the stuffed elephant David had given her on her 5th birthday. "Mom, you're up early again. Is today the important day?" Olivia smoothed her daughter's hair, buying time before answering. "Yes, sweetheart. The interview at Westbrook Innovations. The one that could change everything," though she kept that last thought silent. "Why do you look worried? Your pictures are the prettiest ever." Olivia's throat tightened as she crouched to her daughter's level. "Sometimes being good isn't enough, sweetheart. Sometimes people need to believe in you." Lily's eyes, so much like David's, held none of his absence, only certainty. "I believe in you, Mommy." The phone buzzed before Olivia could respond. The babysitter's name flashed on screen, and with it a sinking feeling. The message was brief, apologetic, and devastating. "So sorry, woke up with stomach flu. Can't make it today." Olivia set the phone down carefully as if the bad news might spill out if she moved too quickly. The interview was in 90 minutes, no time to find another sitter, no family nearby to call, no neighbor she trusted enough yet. The mental calculations didn't take long. There was only one option. "Looks like you're coming with me today, Lily Bean. We need to find your best dress and quietest activities." Lily bounced on her toes, like a take your daughter to work day. "Even before you work there?" Despite everything, Olivia laughed. "Exactly like that, except you'll be on your very best behavior and very, very quiet." As they drove through Seattle's morning traffic, the Westbrook Innovations headquarters gradually came into view, a towering structure of glass and steel reaching toward the clearing sky. 42 floors of innovation, wealth, and opportunity, all wrapped in a facade that reflected the clouds. Lily pressed her nose against the car window, eyes wide at the enormity of it. Olivia checked her reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. Her blouse was ironed but 3 seasons old. Her portfolio was impeccable but lacked the brand names that opened doors. Her resume showed talent but gaps the months after David's death, when she could barely function the time devoted to helping Lily through her own grief. They parked in the visitor section, Olivia mentally rehearsing how to explain Lily's presence without sounding unprofessional. The rain had stopped, but puddles remained, reflecting fragments of the building and sky. Lily jumped over each one, counting aloud until Olivia gently took her hand. "It's like a glass castle, Mommy." Olivia squeezed her daughter's hand, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "Remember what we practiced. You'll sit quietly with your tablet and coloring book while I talk to the people inside." The lobby stretched before them, all marble, in muted lighting, the Westbrook logo suspended above the reception desk, a stylized W that seemed to float in midair. The receptionist, a woman with immaculate makeup and a navy blouse that matched the company colors perfectly, looked up from her computer screen. Her smile remained professional when she noticed Olivia, but faltered slightly at the sight of Lily. "Olivia Mitchell for the 10 o'clock interview with Nathan Westbrook." The receptionist's fingers moved efficiently across her keyboard. Her eyes flicked to Lily again. "I see you're scheduled with Mr. Westbrook, but there's been a change. You'll be meeting with Daniel Westbrook instead." Olivia felt her carefully constructed composure waver. "The CEO, not the creative director." The receptionist's expression revealed nothing. "Change of plans. He likes to evaluate candidates personally for certain positions." Her gaze dropped to Lily again, something unreadable passing over her face. "Have a seat. I'll let them know you've arrived." Olivia guided Lily to the waiting area where leather chairs faced a wall of windows overlooking the city. Her heart raced as she tried to process this change. Daniel Westbrook was the face of the company, known for his business acumen and his reluctance to appear in public since his wife's death 5 years ago. Meeting him directly was either an incredible opportunity or a recipe for disaster. Lily tugged at her sleeve. Why does everyone look like they're about to go to church? Olivia followed her daughter's gaze across the lobby, where employees moved with purposeful strides, their expressions calibrated to convey confidence without emotion, because they want to impress the people upstairs. Just like me. But you already make beautiful pictures. Olivia brushed a curl from Lily's forehead, a lump forming in her throat. That's sweet, but sometimes being good at something isn't enough in places like this. Lily tilted her head, considering this with the seriousness only a 7-year-old could muster. I believe in you. Before Olivia could respond, the receptionist called her name. Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Westbrook will see you now. Olivia's pulse quickened. This way, the receptionist was already walking toward the elevator bank. He's been different since... Her voice trailed off as she caught herself. This way, please. Olivia knelt to Lily's eye-level hands, trembling slightly as she straightened her daughter's collar. You stay right here. You have your tablet and your coloring book. If you need anything, ask the nice lady at the desk. Do not, under any circumstances, come looking for me. Understand? Lily nodded solemnly, then broke into a grin. Unless there's a dragon. No dragons, Olivia laughed despite her nerves. Not even then. The elevator ascended with stomach-dropping speed, 40 floors passing in less than a minute. The receptionist led her through corridors lined with glass-walled conference rooms and open workspace areas, each step bringing them closer to the corner office, where Seattle's skyline stretched in two directions. He's waiting inside. Good luck, the receptionist said, though her tone suggested luck might not be enough. Olivia took a deep breath, clutched her portfolio tighter, and stepped through the door. Daniel Westbrook stood at the far end of the office, silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows. He was taller than his photos suggested, his posture straight, but stiff as if perpetually braced. Silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples, and his suit, clearly expensive, hung on his frame with the indifference of someone who had stopped caring what others thought long ago. He didn't turn when she entered. Olivia Mitchell, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. His voice came cool and measured, still facing the windows. You're late, she blinked, confused. I was asked to wait in the lobby, and I don't care why. He turned, then his gray eyes sharp but tired as they locked onto her. I don't value excuses, only outcomes. Olivia swallowed hard, recalibrating her approach. Of course. She stepped forward, setting her portfolio on the table between them with more confidence than she felt. I understand your time is valuable. Shall we begin? He gestured toward the portfolio without taking a seat. Something in his manner suggested he'd already decided against her. Show me. She opened to the first spread, explaining her approach to color theory and visual storytelling. Her voice steadied as she moved through her work professional instincts, taking over despite his unnerving stillness. This campaign increased donations for the Children's Literacy Foundation by 40% within 3 months. Daniel didn't nod, didn't comment, barely blinked. It was like pitching to a wall that occasionally breathed. Just as she reached the centerpiece of her portfolio, a comprehensive rebranding for a women's health clinic. The door burst open. Mommy, my game froze again. Lily stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, completely oblivious to the significance of her interruption. Olivia's stomach plummeted. She reached for her daughter, mortified apology already forming on her lips. Daniel raised his hand, not dismissively, but as if to pause the moment. He regarded Lily with an expression Olivia couldn't decipher, then crouched slightly to the child's eye level. Lily, unintimidated by the man's status or demeanor, studied him with innocent intensity. You look sad. Daniel blinked, the first genuine reaction he'd shown since Olivia arrived. The air in the room shifted, molecules rearranging around this unexpected truth. When I feel sad, hugs make it better. Lily continued matter-of-factly. Before Olivia could intervene, Lily stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Daniel's legs. The hug was simple, unconditional, asking nothing in return. Daniel stood, frozen hands hovering awkwardly in the air. Then slowly, one hand settled on Lily's back, just for a second, a whisper of contact. Lily pulled away, satisfied with her work. That's better. Daniel looked down at her, then up at Olivia. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition perhaps of what it meant to maintain composure when your world had been turned inside out. You're not like the others, he said finally, voice lower than before. Most come in with arrogance. You came in real. He turned to the portfolio but didn't open it. You start Monday. Olivia stared at him, certain she'd misheard. But you haven't even seen most of my work. I've seen enough, he looked back at Lily. It's rare to meet someone who says exactly what they mean. Olivia could barely breathe. Thank you, she managed. Daniel nodded once. Deborah will handle your onboarding. You'll be working directly with my creative team. He was already turning back to the window when Olivia collected her portfolio and guided Lily toward the door. In the hallway, Lily looked up at her, suddenly worried. Mom, did I ruin it? Olivia laughed, eyes glassy with disbelief. No, honey. I think you might have saved it. The elevator doors closed behind them, and for the first time in 2 years, Olivia felt something other than the pressure to merely survive. Monday morning arrived with relentless sunshine, as if the universe had decided Olivia deserved at least good weather for her first day. She stood at the edge of the open concept workspace on the 38th floor, new employee badge clipped awkwardly to her blouse portfolio bag, hanging from her shoulder like a security blanket. People glanced up as she entered, some curious, others indifferent, a few openly surprised. She wasn't the typical Westbrook hire, and everyone seemed to know it. The space hummed with quiet efficiency, modern workstations, glass-walled meeting rooms, state-of-the-art technology at every desk. It was pristine, intimidating, and expensive, like walking onto a film set where she hadn't been given the script. A woman in tailored charcoal pants and a rust-colored blazer approached with brisk efficiency. Early 40s, impeccable posture, tablet in hand instead of clipboard analog things, apparently too pedestrian for Westbrook Innovations. You must be Olivia. I'm Deborah Jenkins, HR Director. Welcome aboard. Olivia extended her hand, mirroring the woman's professional confidence. Thank you. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Deborah's handshake was firm, brief, efficient. Mr. Westbrook asked me personally to handle your onboarding. You'll be working directly with the creative team starting today. Your desk is near the south windows, she continued, already walking ahead. Of course, Olivia replied, her voice thinner than intended. You made quite an impression, Deborah added, navigating between workstations. Not many get hired on the spot, fewer still with their child in tow. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. That wasn't exactly planned. Deborah glanced over her shoulder, expression unreadable. Sometimes the best things aren't. They stopped at a corner desk with a sweeping view of Puget Sound. A small potted succulent waited beside a high-end monitor, the kind Olivia had priced online but could never justify purchasing. She set down her bag, trying not to let her fingers tremble. You'll be working on a new visual strategy for our outreach initiative, Deborah explained. Daniel, Mr. Westbrook is revamping the entire philanthropic division. Olivia raised an eyebrow. He mentioned none of that during the interview. Deborah gave a tight smile. He rarely explains his decisions. You'll get used to it. Before Olivia could respond, a voice cut through the space like the sudden toll of a bell. Ms. Mitchell. She turned to find Daniel Westbrook standing near the stairwell. Today he wore a slate gray shirt, rolled to the elbows, no tie, and the same unreadable expression from the interview, though something in his eyes seemed less distant. The entire office paused as if collectively holding its breath. Olivia straightened. Mr. Westbrook, good morning. Do you have a moment? He gestured toward a small glass conference room tucked behind a structural column. Deborah took this as her cue and stepped away as Olivia followed Daniel. Inside the glass room, the ambient office noise became a muted hum. The space was bright and warm in the way expensive things often were, pristine but impersonal. Daniel leaned against the table, arms crossed. I wanted to make sure your first day wasn't too disorienting. Olivia gave a nervous laugh, besides being treated like a unicorn at a dog show. Not too bad. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. You're handling it better than most. She hesitated. I'm still not sure why I'm here. Really? He looked at her not dismissively, but as if measuring something she couldn't see. Because you're talented, he said finally, and because you didn't pretend to be someone else. A pause stretched between them. And Lily? He added, voice softening. She reminded me that some things matter more than numbers on a screen. Olivia's breath caught. She's just herself. She doesn't know how not to be. That's what makes her remarkable, he said quietly. Something fragile passed through his voice, almost a crack between words. He caught it and cleared his throat, shifting gears like a car changing lanes too abruptly. I'd like you to join a planning session this afternoon. We're developing a concept for our annual foundation gala. It'll be our biggest event in 5 years. Olivia blinked. I haven't even logged into my computer yet. Then you'll bring fresh eyes, he countered, straightening. The meeting's at 3. Deborah will brief you on the details. She nodded, unsure what else to say. Of course. Thank you. As he moved toward the door, he paused just long enough to add, and Olivia, your daughter didn't ruin your interview. She saved it. He walked out before she could reply, leaving her standing in a silence that felt suddenly too loud. By 3 o'clock, Olivia had memorized the names of everyone on her team, read through the foundation's previous marketing materials, and taken detailed notes on the company's philanthropic history. The faster she found her footing, the safer she would feel. The planning session was held in a long boardroom with glass walls that offered views of the city on one side and the office floor on the other. No privacy, just the illusion of it, which seemed to be Westbrook's architectural philosophy throughout. Daniel sat at the head of the table, scrolling through something on his tablet. Across from him sat a woman who could only be Victoria Westbrook, the CFO, and Daniel's sister. Her resemblance to him was striking, same strong jawline and gray eyes. But where his demeanor was controlled, stillness hers was coiled energy. She flipped through a leather-bound portfolio with precise movements, as if each page turn was a calculated decision. Olivia slipped into the last available seat, nodding politely to those around her. Victoria glanced up, her gaze cool and assessing. You're the new hire. Olivia nodded, trying not to wilt under the scrutiny. Olivia Mitchell, design. Victoria studied her with open skepticism. Right. The one with the unusual interview process. Daniel didn't look up from his tablet. Victoria, I'm just saying, Victoria continued, her voice smooth as polished stone. We've spent years building a reputation for discretion. Now we're embracing sidewalk surprises. Olivia opened her mouth to defend herself, but Daniel raised a hand. She's here. That's all that matters. Victoria's gaze lingered a moment longer before dropping to her portfolio. The subtle dismissal stung more than any direct criticism could have. The meeting progressed through project timelines, donor targets, and venue constraints. Olivia kept quiet, absorbing everything, noting the dynamics between team members. Then someone said, "We need a theme for the gala. Something emotional but not overdone." Victoria made a sound somewhere between a sigh and a snort. "Let's not pander to sympathy." And without meaning to, Olivia spoke. "What if it's not about sympathy? What if it's about renewal? About what happens when someone gives you a second chance and you didn't even know you needed one?" The room fell quiet. Victoria raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Do you have a visual to back that up?" Olivia hesitated, then pulled her notebook from her bag. She opened to a sketch Lily had drawn that morning. 3 stick figures standing under a tree, one holding a heart, one holding flowers, and one reaching toward the sun. "This isn't professional," she admitted, holding it up. "But it's honest." Daniel stared at the drawing, his jaw tensing slightly before relaxing. "We'll use it." Victoria blinked, genuinely surprised for the first time. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," Daniel replied, his tone making it clear the matter was settled. "It stays." Olivia wasn't sure what surprised her more, his decision or how final it sounded. After the meeting dispersed, Victoria lingered behind. She approached Olivia slowly, arms crossed, expression composed into something that resembled a smile, but contained no warmth. "I've seen people like you before," she said, voice low enough that only Olivia could hear. "You come in all quiet and bright-eyed, but this place, it eats people who mistake kindness for leverage." Olivia met her gaze evenly, finding strength she didn't know she had. "I'm not here to climb ladders. I just want to do work that means something." Victoria tilted her head slightly. "Then watch your step. Meaningful work doesn't guarantee safe ground." She walked away, heels clicking like punctuation marks on the hardwood floor. Olivia stood there, clutching Lily's drawing, her hands steadier than they had been that morning. Not safe, perhaps, but something better, real. The rain returned the following morning, tapping against the windows of Olivia's new workspace. She watched water droplets race down the glass, the Seattle skyline blurred behind them, as if the city had taken a deep breath and momentarily lost focus. Her fingers hovered above her keyboard, but the blinking cursor seemed to mock her hesitation. She wasn't stuck on the project. The foundation redesign concepts were flowing easily. What she couldn't shake was the way Daniel had looked at Lily's drawing yesterday. Not just approval or even admiration, but recognition. It lingered in his eyes, the kind of recognition that didn't come from the drawing itself, but from what it stirred within him. She'd seen that look before on the faces of grieving parents, at school fundraisers, on her own reflection some mornings. That ache of something lost, something too fragile to name. Coffee. The voice startled her. Daniel stood just outside her workspace holding two mugs. Olivia blinked in surprise. For me, he shrugged and stepped closer without waiting for permission. It's either this or the espresso machine that sounds like a jet engine. She smiled, accepting the mug. Thanks. I didn't peg you for the bring your employees coffee type. I'm not, he said, settling into the empty chair across from her desk. But you're not exactly a typical employee. She laughed softly. That sounds like a compliment and a warning. Maybe it's both. A quiet moment passed between them. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the glass. Olivia took a sip of coffee, buying time while she gathered her courage. You saw something in that drawing yesterday, she said finally. Something beyond a child's sketch. Daniel didn't respond immediately, his fingers wrapped around his mug, not tight but careful, as if handling something that might shatter if gripped too firmly. Lily reminds me of someone, he said, eventually his voice dropping lower. Elizabeth, my wife. She was light in a world full of static. The kind of person who made you feel like everything could still turn out okay. Olivia watched how he held the mug, how his gaze fixed on some point beyond the window. I didn't know you were married, she said gently. Though of course she did. Everyone knew the story. Elizabeth Westbrook, philanthropist and artist, lost to cancer 5 years ago. I'm not, he replied simply. Not anymore, Bum. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was respectful, full of unspoken understanding. I'm sorry, she whispered. So was I, he murmured, for a long time. Olivia looked down at her hands. You don't have to talk about it. I want to, he said, then surprised himself by adding, with you. She looked up, meeting his gaze. Their eyes locked, not with fireworks or theatrical tension, but with the quiet recognition of two people who understood that grief wasn't something you overcame. It was something you learned to carry differently as time passed. Before either could speak again, Deborah appeared in the doorway, glancing between them with barely concealed curiosity. Sorry to interrupt, she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't sorry at all. Mr. Westbrook, the PR team is waiting in the fourth-floor conference room. Daniel stood, his professional demeanor sliding back into place like a well-worn coat. Of course, he turned to Olivia. Thank you for the company. He left without looking back. Deborah lingered, studying Olivia with newfound interest. You've made quite the impression, she said, her voice casual, but eyes watchful. Olivia didn't answer, unwilling to engage in office gossip. You should be careful, Deborah added, lowering her voice. People talk, especially when something looks like more than what it is. Olivia exhaled slowly, her coffee now cold in her hand. Let them talk. I've been through worse than whispers. That evening, as Olivia picked Lily up from after-school care, the rain had stopped. The sky broke open with golden light, and Lily skipped beside her to the car, chattering about art class and lunch trades. Mom, is Mr. Sadman really your boss? Lily asked as they walked through the parking lot. Olivia laughed, unlocking the car door. Yes, though you should probably stop calling him that. But he's not sat around you, Lily observed, buckling herself into the booster seat. I think he likes you. Olivia froze mid-motion, keys still in her hand. Lily, he's my boss. It's professional. He smiled at you yesterday, real smiling, like the kind you do when you draw something perfect. Olivia stared at her daughter, unsure how a 7-year-old had become so perceptive. People see different things than kids do, she said gently. Lily wrinkled her nose in disagreement. No, they just pretend not to see. I don't know why grown-ups do that. Back at home, Olivia reheated leftover pasta while Lily painted at the kitchen table. The apartment smelled like garlic and crayon wax, comfortingly familiar after a day of new experiences. Olivia glanced over at her daughter's latest creation. 3 figures stood under an orange, one tall with silver-streaked hair, one with a bun, one with bright yellow curls. They were holding hands. Olivia's chest tightened at the implications, unsure whether to laugh or cry at her daughter's unsubtle matchmaking. The next morning, she arrived at work to find a note on her desk. Lunch at 12:30, my office, no portfolios, just conversation. DW. She stared at it, pulse quickening, despite her best efforts to remain professional. At 12:27, she knocked on his office door. Surprised to find her hands were cold, despite the building's perfect climate control. Daniel opened the door himself. No tie today, she observed, trying for lightness. He glanced down at his open collar. I only wear them when I need armor, and today I wanted to breathe. She stepped inside and stopped short. A small table had been set near the windows, complete with 2 plates of grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and sparkling water. Not takeout containers or delivery bags, actual place settings. "You cooked?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I supervised," he admitted. "Melissa in the culinary department owes me a favor." They sat, and for a moment neither spoke. The water stretched beyond the window, calm and vast, container ships moving slowly toward the horizon. "I was nervous to see you again," Olivia admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. "Why?" "Because the last time we talked, it felt like something changed, and I wasn't ready for it to mean something." Daniel nodded slowly. "I haven't let anyone in for a long time, Olivia." She smiled sadly. "Yeah, I kind of figured that out." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You make me want to remember how." Her breath caught, and just as quickly her mind flashed to Victoria's warning, to Deborah's caution, to Lily's drawings. "It can't be just about Lily," she whispered. "It's not," he said, "but she's the one who opened the door." A long pause stretched between them, filled with possibilities neither was quite ready to name. "Let's not rush this," Olivia said finally, voice soft but certain. "I've lived too much life to dive into anything blind." Daniel raised his glass of water. "Then here's to walking slow." They clinked glasses gently, and for the first time in years, Olivia didn't feel like she was just surviving her day. She felt like she was stepping into it. The following week, an unexpected email appeared in every employee's inbox. Subject: "Take your child to work day Westbrook style." From Daniel Westbrook to all staff. "Tomorrow, employees are encouraged to bring their children to the office. Our creativity is better when we see the world through younger eyes. Looking forward to the laughter and the crayons." Olivia read it twice, then a third time. She wasn't sure what surprised her more, that Daniel had personally sent the company-wide message, or that it had been his idea to begin with. At first, she thought it might be a subtle joke, but by the time she walked through the glass doors the next morning, Lily's hand in hers, the building hummed with unfamiliar energy. Small sneakers squeaked across marble floors. Laughter floated down from the design department. Crayons rolled along desks where spreadsheets usually reigned. Children there were coloring on whiteboards, spinning in office chairs, eating bagels with the entitlement of visiting royalty. The corporate stillness had been replaced by chaotic life, and nobody seemed to know quite how to respond except the children, who accepted it as their natural due. And then came the moment that made Olivia's heart stop. "Mr. Sedman, you came." Lily's voice rang out across the atrium. Olivia turned to see her daughter bolting down the hallway, curls bouncing, backpacks swinging wildly. And there was Daniel, button-down shirt, no tie, smiling. Not the careful, measured expression he wore in meetings, but a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Lily collided with him at full speed, hugging his waist without hesitation. Then she remembered her manners and looked up. "Was that okay?" Daniel placed a hand gently on her back and nodded. "I've been waiting for you." Olivia's breath caught, not just because of what he said, but how he said it, warm, without reservation, like family. The rest of the day blurred in a golden, chaotic rhythm. Someone from marketing gave Lily a blank name tag and let her design her own. It now read Creative Director Unofficial, in glitter pen. She sat beside Olivia at her workstation, coloring intently while offering unsolicited but surprisingly insightful opinions about color palettes. "I think the blue looks too sad," she whispered once, leaning close to Olivia's monitor. "Try yellow. It feels like hope." Daniel walked by at that moment and chuckled. She's not wrong. By mid-afternoon, the finance department had adopted a set of twin toddlers who were now unofficial morale officers. An IT developer had set up a Lego station in the corner of the open workspace. Victoria appeared briefly, looking simultaneously bewildered and amused by the transformation of her precisely ordered world. Throughout the day, Olivia found herself watching Daniel more than once. Not because he commanded attention, he didn't. He moved through the building like someone who had finally found his footing, after years of unsteady ground, interacting, listening, even laughing fully, when a 5-year-old asked if he was the boss of candy too. But every time his eyes found Olivia across the room, something else flickered. Quiet, steady, intentional. Around 3 o'clock, Sophie appeared unannounced in the creative department, wearing paint-splattered jeans and holding a coffee cup the size of her face. "You weren't going to tell me," she demanded, eyebrows raised. "Take your child to work day," and Daniel Westbrook suddenly turns into a human. Olivia laughed, pulling her friend aside. "I didn't know until yesterday. He sent the email himself." Sophie glanced across the room to where Lily was now giving Daniel a drawing titled Our Team. It featured him, Olivia, and Lily all holding hands under a giant rainbow. Oh boy, Sophie muttered. You're in trouble. Olivia frowned. Why? Because that man isn't just being nice, Olivia. He's choosing you. Olivia folded her arms, suddenly defensive. He's being kind to Lily. Sophie tilted her head knowingly. No, he's looking at you like you're the first quiet breath he's taken in years. Before Olivia could answer, Deborah appeared behind them. Ms. Stevens, I don't believe we've met. Sophie straightened. Sophie, I'm Olivia's friend, artist gallery owner, occasional deliverer of uncomfortable truths. Deborah offered a polite but tight smile. Pleasure. Just be mindful. This isn't a place for personal entanglements. Sophie blinked, then gave a small, pointed smile of her own. Then you might want to tell your CEO. He's 3 crayons away from building a pillow fort with her kid. Deborah didn't respond. She simply nodded and walked away. Olivia exhaled slowly, watching her go. She doesn't like me, she muttered. Sophie smirked. Jealousy comes in blazers. Later that evening, as the office quieted and parents gathered their children, Olivia lingered to clean up Lily's creative aftermath. She found one more drawing tucked under a notepad. A house with a porch, a swing, a garden. The same 3 stick figures stood smiling out front. She stared at it chest tight with a complex mix of emotions. She has a gift, Daniel said behind her. Olivia turned to find him standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, tie still absent, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him at the office. She doesn't draw what she sees, he added. She draws what she wants it to be true. Olivia nodded slowly, still holding the picture. It scares me sometimes how much she sees. He walked closer, voice quiet. She sees what matters, and she's not afraid to name it. Olivia set the drawing down and met his eyes. Neither are you. Not anymore. The silence between them swelled, unspoken things hanging in the air. Then Daniel said, Come to the coast this weekend, just for the day. I have a house in Whidbey Island. I haven't opened in a while. Lily could see the beach. You could breathe. Olivia hesitated. That's a big invitation. I know, he said, holding her gaze, but I think it's time I stop being afraid of what feels good. She swallowed hard, pulse quickening. Let me think about it. Daniel nodded once. I'll be there. Door open, porch light on. He walked away, hands in his pockets, leaving her alone in the gentle hum of the empty office. Olivia stood still for a long moment, heart loud in the quiet. She looked down at Lily's drawing again, the house, the swing, the family. For the first time since taking the job, she wondered if her daughter's pictures weren't just wishful thinking. Maybe they were instructions. Maybe they were maps to a future she hadn't allowed herself to imagine. Whidbey Island greeted them with a breeze that smelled of salt and sun-baked sand. Olivia stepped out of her car, holding Lily's hand, and felt the mainland tension dissolve as the ferry crossing faded from her shoulders. This quiet stretch of Pacific Northwest shoreline offered a different kind of silence than what she had grown accustomed to, not the anxious absence of noise, but a peaceful fullness that made her aware of her own breathing. Daniel stood on the wide porch of a weathered, shingled cottage, sleeves rolled to expose forearms, tanned from what must have been rare moments outdoors, hair tousled by wind rather than carefully styled. The absence of his usual business attire revealed a different man, more human, less untouchable. No crisp suit, just a light linen shirt and khakis that moved with the coastal breeze. Wow, Lily whispered, eyes wide, as she took in the ocean beyond the dunes. Is this a real beach house or one of the fancy fake ones on TV? Daniel smiled, the expression reaching his eyes this time. It's real, I promise. The porch creaked softly as they climbed the steps. Daniel moved aside to let them enter first, a gesture that felt less like politeness and more like vulnerability, opening a door to a place he had kept sealed. Inside, the space contradicted everything Olivia had imagined. No minimalist showroom of glass and chrome like his penthouse was rumored to be. This place was warm and lived in, bearing the comfortable imperfection of a home rather than a property. Books filled built-in shelves with a haphazard logic suggesting they had been read rather than displayed. The scent of lemon wood polish lingered beneath notes of sea air. An old record player occupied one corner, and sunlight poured through gauzy curtains that swayed with the cross breeze. This doesn't feel like you, Olivia observed, running her fingers along a bookshelf filled with dog-eared novels and what looked like family cookbooks. Daniel's smile faded into something softer, more reflective. It feels like who I used to be. He led them to a sunroom at the back of the house where a long table had been cleared of whatever usually occupied it. Art supplies were arranged in tidy rows, paints, sketch pads, watercolors, colored pencils, a child's dream creative station. A folded note sat in the center, written in Daniel's clean, precise handwriting, "Sunshine, this is where you grow better, DW." Lily gasped, her excitement physically lifting her onto her toes. "Is this for me?" "All yours," Daniel confirmed. "I figured an artist needs her own space." She dropped her small backpack and ran to the table, already unzipping the pencil case she carried everywhere, her world immediately shrinking to the creative possibilities before her. "You didn't have to do all this," Olivia said quietly, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness behind the gesture. "I know," Daniel replied simply, "but I wanted to." They walked out to the porch while Lily settled into her artistic sanctuary, the screen door clicking softly behind them. The breeze rolled in from the water, carrying distant sounds of seagulls and children's laughter from somewhere down the beach. Olivia leaned against the railing, letting the tension of the past weeks dissolve into the rhythmic sound of waves. "You're full of surprises." Daniel joined her quiet for a long moment before responding. "You want to know something strange? I haven't been back here in years, not since Elizabeth died." Olivia's breath caught, understanding the significance of his admission. "This place was supposed to be where we raised our family," he continued, eyes fixed on the horizon as if reading a future that had been erased. "Where summers were spent barefoot, where our child would learn to swim in that ocean. But after the accident, I locked it up. Couldn't breathe in it without feeling like I'd drown." Olivia didn't speak, allowing silence to hold the weight of his memory. Some truths required space rather than words. He turned toward her slowly. "And now here I am watching your daughter paint at that table like the house was waiting for her this whole time." "She has that effect," Olivia said softly. "She walks into places and makes them feel like home." Daniel's eyes met hers. "So do you." The air between them thickened, not with tension, but with possibility. Olivia turned her face toward the sea, heart pounding against her ribs. "I don't know what this is," she said quietly. "You and me, this thing." "Neither do I," Daniel admitted. "But for the first time in a long time, I want to find out." She looked at him again, finding emotion in his gaze that made her chest tighten. There was no script for this moment, no corporate strategy, just truth raw and terrifying. "I'm scared," she confessed, voice barely above a whisper. "I've built so many walls for Lily for me because it's easier to be alone than risk someone not staying." "I'm not asking you to tear them down," Daniel said. "Just leave the door open a little." Before she could answer, the screen door creaked. Lily stood there, paint smudged across her cheek, holding a picture in both hands. "I made this," she announced proudly. "It's us." Olivia stepped forward and took the offering. Three figures stood in front of a porch, one tall, with silver-streaked hair, one with a bun, one small with arms raised, the sun drawn as a swirl of yellow and orange above them. "I gave you a porch swing," Lily explained, pointing to a blue shape hanging from the roof, "because porch swings mean you stay long enough to watch the stars." Olivia felt her throat tighten with emotion. Daniel crouched beside Lily, meeting her at eye level. "May I keep it?" "Only if you promise not to fold it," she responded with seven-year-old seriousness. "I'll frame it." Lily beamed, satisfied with this arrangement. That night, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned lavender, Daniel grilled vegetables and fish, while Olivia set the outdoor table. Lily danced barefoot on the porch, humming to herself between bites of strawberry. The ordinary domesticity of the scene felt surreal yet somehow inevitable, as if the universe had been nudging them toward this moment all along. After dinner, Olivia stood alone at the shoreline, waves licking at her feet, the water colder than expected for early summer. Daniel joined her hands in his pockets, comfortable in the growing twilight. "She told me she hasn't seen me this happy in months," Olivia said, glancing at him. "She's not wrong," Daniel observed. "You look lighter." Olivia gazed out at the water, voice barely audible above the gentle surf. "I didn't think there was room in my life for anything other than survival." Daniel turned to her. "There's always room. We just forget how to make it." She looked up at him, the moonlight casting soft shadows across his face, revealing lines earned through both joy and grief. Then, gently not rushing it, he reached for her hand. Their fingers met, tentative at first, then interlacing with quiet certainty. Olivia didn't pull away. and for the first time in years, the touch of another person felt like possibility rather than obligation. Monday arrived with harsh sunlight that didn't feel like a blessing. It pierced through the office windows at Westbrook Innovations, bouncing off glass tables and chrome fixtures, making everything appear too clean, too sterile, after the organic warmth of the beach house. Olivia adjusted her blazer and stepped off the elevator. Lily's laughter from the weekend still echoing faintly in her mind, her fingertips still remembering the warmth of Daniel's hand. Yet the moment the elevator doors closed behind her, this illusion of calm dissolved. Victoria Westbrook stood waiting, arms crossed outside Olivia's workspace. Her expression was unreadable, her lips pressed into a near smile, tight, knowing professionally predatory. "Olivia," she said smoothly, "back from your island escape." Olivia kept her tone polite, neutral. "It was a beautiful weekend, thank you." Victoria's eyebrow arched. "Oh, no need to thank me. I didn't approve the trip." Olivia paused, recalibrating. It was on personal time. Victoria stepped forward just enough to close the distance between them. "You're rising awfully fast for someone who didn't even come in through the front door." Olivia felt the words land like velvet-covered stones. "Are we having a conversation about protocol or something else?" Victoria's smile thinned to a professional veneer. "Just a reminder that visibility comes with responsibility and consequences. This company has layers, Olivia, deep ones. It remembers who climbed the stairs and who took the elevator straight to the top." Olivia swallowed hard but met her gaze directly. "I didn't ask for special treatment. I came here to work. That hasn't changed." Victoria leaned in slightly. "Just make sure it stays that way." She turned and walked off, heels clicking with deliberate grace. Olivia exhaled and sat at her desk, pulse racing. Her fingers hovered over her keyboard, but her focus scattered like light through a prism. There was no ignoring what that exchange meant. Victoria wasn't just suspicious, she was preparing for something. Around noon, Daniel messaged, "Can we meet in my office at Wenderwan? Just a quick check-in." She replied affirmatively, trying to ignore the flutter in her chest at seeing his name on her screen. But when 1 o'clock arrived, the mood had shifted. Daniel's door was closed, unusual for him since she'd started. Deborah stood near reception with a subtle frown. A stiffness permeated the air, one that hadn't been present before the weekend. Olivia knocked gently and entered to find Daniel reviewing a file, his desk uncharacteristically cluttered with papers. His smile flickered when he saw her, but didn't fully materialize. "Hey," he greeted her, gesturing to the seat across from him. "I wanted to talk before the board meeting." "There's been some chatter." Olivia sat, pulse already accelerating. "Chatter about favoritism," Daniel said quietly. "And blurred lines." She froze. From Victoria, Daniel didn't confirm, but didn't deny it either, which was answer enough. "I just want to make sure you're protected. This place notices everything. People talk when change happens too fast." Olivia leaned forward, voice steady despite her racing heart. "Did I cross a line?" "No," he said quickly, "not with me. But perception isn't always tied to truth, and perception is everything in this world." She sat back, eyes locked on his. "So what now?" Daniel hesitated, then spoke carefully as if measuring each word. "We create space just a little, publicly, to keep the waters calm." Olivia nodded slowly, the hurt slipping in even as she understood the logic. "You mean act like we don't care when we do?" He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "It's not forever, just until the storm passes." She stood, heart heavy with understanding. "Then I hope it passes fast." She walked out without another word. Back at her desk, Lily's drawing sat pinned beside her monitor. A small reminder of a moment that now felt miles away. Olivia tried to work, but her chest ached with the familiar pain of retreat. Her thoughts refused to organize themselves. She typed, deleted, retyped, stared at the blinking cursor like it might offer wisdom. Later that afternoon, Sophie called. "I've got an artist bailing on a gallery show next week. I need a replacement. Thought of you?" Olivia blinked, momentarily disoriented by the shift in focus. "Me. You've got pieces ready. They're raw, honest. The kind of emotional realism people lean into. Come on, Olivia. You used to breathe through your art." Olivia hesitated, glancing at her current project, a sleek professional design that suddenly felt hollow. "I don't know. With work. And Lily. Bring Lily. She can draw at the gallery. And you need this." Olivia stared at the empty design mock-up on her screen. "I'll think about it." Don't, Sophie replied with characteristic directness. Say yes before you talk yourself out of it. That night, Olivia and Lily sat on the living room floor surrounded by scattered art supplies and blank canvases. Olivia watched her daughter draw another family scene, this time inside a gallery space with hanging lights. Mom, Lily asked, tilting her head thoughtfully. Why don't you draw anymore? Olivia swallowed the question, cutting deeper than her daughter could know. I forgot how. Lily reached over and placed a crayon in her hand with the solemn certainty only children possess. Then I'll remind you. The next morning, Olivia arrived at the office with her decision already made. She messaged Sophie, I'm in. Let's hang the paintings. Perhaps this was what she needed, not just a corporate identity or a budding relationship, but something that was hers alone. A space where she controlled the narrative, where her voice wouldn't be silenced by boardroom politics or corporate perception. She didn't need everyone's approval. She just needed to remember who she was before grief told her to be smaller. The gallery smelled of fresh paint, floor polish, and anticipation. It was Thursday evening, the final walkthrough before Friday's opening. Olivia stood near the far wall, watching Sophie adjust the lighting on the third piece of her collection, a painting of Lily sleeping in the hospital during a fever last winter, light streaming through blinds across her small form. The gallery space was modest but dignified, white walls, high ceilings, natural wood flooring. Every corner held something raw and authentic, something that felt like it mattered. Her paintings lined the east wall, 5 in total. Each one captured a fragment of her journey, grief, hope, motherhood, survival, joy amidst chaos. They weren't perfect, but they were honest. I told you, Sophie said, stepping back beside her, they hold. People are going to feel these. Olivia looked down at her hands, still stained with charcoal from a last-minute touch-up. I didn't think I had anything left worth showing. Sophie bumped her shoulder lightly. Turns out you had an entire story trapped inside you, and now it's out where it belongs. Footsteps echoed from the back hallway, and Olivia turned to see Lily appear with a lollipop in her mouth and a clipboard twice her size. I took inventory, she declared, handing the clipboard to Sophie. We have 24 chairs, but one's wobbly. Sophie saluted with mock seriousness. You're the only intern I trust with this kind of pressure. Lily grinned and skipped off toward a bench beneath a painting titled Stillness After the Storm, the piece Olivia had almost discarded twice. Too vulnerable, too revealing of the nights she'd spent watching Lily breathe through illness, terrified of being the only parent, the only safety net. Olivia glanced around the room, pulse quickening with nervous energy. Daniel hadn't responded to her invitation. He hadn't called. He hadn't texted. She told herself not to read into it. He had meetings, deadlines, a company to run, and a sister in his ear. Still, she checked her phone again. Morning, by 7 o'clock, the gallery began to hum with activity. Guests trickled in, friends, local artists, art students, curious passers-by, drawn by the soft jazz spilling out from the open doors. Sophie moved between visitors like a conductor, greeting collectors, accepting compliments, directing attention toward Olivia's work without making her the center of attention. Olivia didn't need the spotlight, but she needed him to see it to see her. At 7:23, the bell above the door chimed. She turned, a heart betraying her before her mind could catch up. Daniel stepped inside, dressed in navy slacks and a gray sport coat, freshly shaven, collected, but with something like urgency in his movements. His eyes scanned the room until they found her, and when they did, the tension in his shoulders visibly released. Olivia didn't move. Neither did he. Then, like the world exhaled just a little, he made his way over to her. I didn't think you'd come, she admitted, voice barely audible above the gallery's ambient noise. I wasn't sure I should, he confessed. She searched his face. Because of Victoria? He hesitated. Because I didn't want my presence to dim your light tonight. Olivia's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. You think you have that kind of power? I think I've made some things harder than they needed to be. They stood in waited silence, words not quite catching up to the current between them. Finally, Daniel looked past her to the painting on the wall behind her shoulder. Stillness After the Storm. His expression shifted, recognition dawning. You painted this, he said, stepping closer. She nodded once. Last year, after Lily got sick with pneumonia, we were in and out of hospitals. I didn't have answers, just fear, and this came out of it. He stared at it for a long moment. The brushwork was chaotic at the edges, grays and deep greens clashing, But toward the center, the line softened into the silhouette of a child curled in protective arms, light pouring from above them. "It's beautiful," he said, voice low, "but it hurts to look at." She exhaled. That's how it felt to live it. He turned to her, something like wonder in his expression. "And you still showed it to the world." She nodded, eyes wet with emotion. "Because someone out there is living it right now." He reached for her hand, then not dramatically, not performatively, just a quiet grounding gesture. "I'm sorry for the space I asked you to create," he said gently. "I thought I was protecting you, but I think I was just protecting myself." Olivia blinked, slowly, words trembling on the edge of her voice. "Do you still want space?" "No," he said without hesitation. "I want truth even when it's messy." Lily appeared beside them, then holding a cup of lemonade and wearing a necklace made from twisted ribbon. She looked up at Daniel and grinned with unrestrained delight. "I told you Mom's pictures would make people cry." Daniel laughed, dropping to a crouch to meet her eye level. "They made me cry too." Lily handed him the ribbon necklace with ceremonial gravity. "This is for being brave." He looked at Olivia, then back at Lily. "Then I guess I'll wear it with pride." The three of them stood together in a moment that didn't feel like the middle of an art opening. It felt like the recognition of something that had been forming slowly and visibly, like a photograph developing in solution. Later that night, after the last guest had departed and the lights dimmed to security levels, Daniel helped Olivia pack unsold prints into protective folders. Lily had fallen asleep in the corner, curled up beneath Sophie's oversized coat. "You're amazing," Daniel said, suddenly turning to her. "I don't say it enough." Olivia shook her head, brushing hair from her face. "I'm not. I'm just trying to keep the pieces from falling." He stepped closer. "Then maybe we pick them up together." She looked at him, allowing herself to consider the possibility. "It's not easy, and it won't be neat." "I don't need neat," he said softly. "I need real." Olivia paused, letting his words settle between them. Then she leaned in and rested her forehead gently against his. They didn't kiss. Not yet. But something deeper happened. They stayed in that shared space, breathing the same air, acknowledging what was growing between them without rushing to name it. The morning after the gallery show, the world felt softer, like the air itself was holding its breath. Olivia stood barefoot in her kitchen, the floor cool beneath her feet, a mug of coffee warmed in her hands. Through the window, early sunlight spilled across the porch and touched the corner of Lily's chalk drawings on the concrete steps. She replayed Daniel's voice in her head again and again. "Then maybe we pick up the pieces together." It wasn't a promise, but it was something more than she'd allowed herself to hope for in years. Mom Lily called sleepily from the hallway, her curls a tangled crown around her face. "Did we become famous?" Olivia laughed, setting her mug down. "Almost. You were the star of the night." Lily yawned, padding over to lean against her mother's side. "Did Mr. Daniel like your paintings? I think he saw them in a way no one else ever has." Lily looked up at her with innocent perception. "Are you going to marry him?" Olivia blinked mid-sip, nearly choking on her coffee. "Whoa, kiddo. Where did that come from?" Lily shrugged with childlike pragmatism. "You smiled different when he held your hand. It looked like when people find something they lost." Olivia crouched, brushing Lily's wild hair away from her face. "He's special, but sometimes grown-ups go slow. We're still figuring it out." "But he makes you less tired," Lily said simply. "That matters." Before Olivia could respond, her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Deborah. "Board meeting moved to this afternoon. Your attendance requested. Bring updated visuals. D. Jenkins." Olivia stared at the screen, then sighed. Duty calls. Back at Westbrook Innovations, the mood had shifted again. There was an undercurrent in the building, a frequency too low to hear but impossible not to feel. Whispers in break rooms ceased when she entered. Glances followed her in the elevator. The temperature seemed to drop just slightly whenever she walked into a room, as if someone had adjusted the thermostat to accommodate her presence. As she stepped into the glass-walled conference room for the board meeting, Victoria was already seated at the far end of the table, tablet in front of her, eyes cool and assessing. "Olivia," she greeted, voice perfectly polite. "So glad you could join us." Daniel wasn't there yet. Olivia took her seat across from Victoria, nodding respectfully. Within minutes, the room began to fill with directors, analysts, and investors, people who spoke in spreadsheets and read emotion as inefficiency. They were the machinery behind Westbrook's success, calibrated for growth rather than connection. Finally, Daniel entered, composed and professional. He offered Olivia a brief glance, no smile, no obvious acknowledgement, but enough to communicate hold steady. The meeting opened with quarterly reports, projections, and a painfully detailed walkthrough of campaign performance metrics. Olivia presented her the slides with clarity and confidence, even as Victoria interrupted twice with clarifying questions that felt more like subtle undermining than genuine inquiry. By the time the meeting adjourned, Olivia felt emotionally depleted, her back damp with tension beneath her blazer. She was packing her laptop when she overheard a quiet exchange between Victoria and one of the board members. "She's talented," yes, the board member conceded. "But let's not forget where she started. We can't build a legacy brand on charity cases." Olivia froze. The words weren't loud or meant for her ears, but they landed like glass shattering inside her chest. She left without saying goodbye. Outside, the air felt too thick to breathe properly. Her hands trembled as she pressed the elevator button. The polished world around her, so pristine, so glass and gold, suddenly felt fragile and artificial. The elevator dinged open and Daniel was inside alone. He stepped back, making space for her. The doors closed, sealing them in momentary privacy. "I heard," he said quietly. Olivia shook her head, struggling to maintain composure. "It doesn't matter. It does. You deserve to be respected." She looked at him directly. "I thought I could handle it. The whispers, the expectations, the pressure. But today I felt like I was someone's charity case, not a contributor." Daniel's voice remained low but carried unmistakable intensity. "They're wrong. And if I've done anything to make it harder, you didn't." She interrupted. "You gave me a door. I walked through it. But now I need to know I'm not just a placeholder." The elevator stopped at the rooftop floor, accessible only to executive leadership. Daniel touched her arm lightly. "Come with me." She followed him through the security door onto the rooftop garden, where Seattle stretched in every direction, bathed in afternoon light. Wind whipped around them, making conversation both private and freeing. "I come up here when the world feels too loud," Daniel explained. "It reminds me that everything looks different from a few stories higher." Olivia stepped to the edge, letting the wind pull at her blazer, feeling small against the urban landscape below. "I've spent so much of my life just trying to survive," she admitted. "And I'm tired of surviving. I want to live, really live. But I won't do it by pretending I belong in spaces that only tolerate me." Daniel stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "Then let's make a new space." She turned to him, heart open, vulnerable. "Are you willing to build it with me? Not just for show, not just behind closed doors, but for real." He nodded, eyes never leaving hers. "I am. But only if you are standing beside me, not behind." A long silence settled between them, and then without ceremony or hesitation, Olivia stepped forward and kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or rushed, it was deliberate, earned through weeks of careful navigation and honest conversation. When they pulled apart, Daniel smiled. That was definitely not a board-approved move. Olivia laughed, breathless and liberated. "I don't care." Neither did he. And for the first time in years, neither of them looked away from what was forming between them. Morning light crept into Olivia's bedroom like a secret, soft and golden, across the hardwood floors. Lily was still sleeping in the next room, cocooned in her blanket fort. For once, the apartment felt still, not with tension or exhaustion, but with possibility. Her phone buzzed beside her coffee mug. A message from Daniel. "Morning, just checking in. Thought about you all night. Don't let them shrink you. D." Olivia stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then she typed back, "You make it easier to stay tall. Let's talk tonight." She hit send before overthinking could derail her courage. By the time she reached the office, the air had shifted again, tense but quiet, like everyone had agreed to speak one octave lower. Victoria wasn't at her desk, but Deborah intercepted Olivia at the elevator. "She's in a mood," Deborah whispered with uncharacteristic informality. "Something about a vote being pushed through without her signature." "I'd avoid eye contact." Olivia raised an eyebrow, filing this information away. "Noted." At her desk, there was a sealed envelope with no name, just her initials, OM. Inside was a typed letter, anonymous and vicious. "You were a pity hire. Everyone knows it. You're just a pretty distraction in a suit someone else paid for." There was no signature, just venom, distilled into courier font. Olivia folded it slowly, slid it into her drawer, and sat back in her chair. Her first instinct was to cry. Her second was to run. But her third, stronger than both, was to rise. Instead of retreating into silence, she emailed Sophie, "Emergency lunch now, your pick." Sophie replied in 30 seconds flat, "On my way, don't bring your sad face. I'm too hungry to deal with feelings without fries." They met at a diner near Pioneer Square, the kind with red vinyl booths, laminated menus, and servers, who called everyone Hun, regardless of age or status. Sophie slid into the booth, took one look at Olivia, and ordered 2 chocolate milkshakes without asking. "I know that look," she said after the server left. "What happened?" Olivia silently passed her the letter. Sophie read it, her expression darkening. "Listen to me," she said, leaning across the table. "People only throw stones at glass that shines. You're not the problem, Olivia. You're the mirror they can't face." Olivia stared at her friend. "That's surprisingly poetic for someone who just ordered chili cheese fries. I'm complicated." Sophie grinned, but the humor cracked around the edges. Olivia's shoulders slumped as the brave face she'd maintained all morning began to falter. "I didn't come here to be someone's scandal," she admitted. "I came because I needed a job. I stayed because somewhere along the way it started to feel like I was building something that mattered." "You are," Sophie insisted. "Then why does every win feel like a weapon someone's going to use against me?" Sophie reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Because you're rising in a place that was never built to carry women like us. But you're still rising. That's the win." Olivia didn't speak. She just let the milkshake chill her fingers, her throat, her anger, feeling rather than ignoring each emotion as it passed through her. That night, she and Daniel met at his beach house on Whidbey Island. Lily was with her best friend's family for a sleepover, and the house was quiet in a way that made everything feel more exposed, more honest. Daniel greeted her at the door with a simple, "Hi," but his eyes said more. Olivia stepped inside and wrapped her arms around him, not desperate, just needing the gravity of another person who understood. "Hey," he whispered against her hair arms, encircling her with careful strength. They sat by the fireplace, though it was late spring and not cold. The glow felt good, human, necessary. Olivia told him about the letter about Victoria, about the overheard conversation that branded her a charity case. Daniel didn't interrupt or offer polished corporate reassurances. He just listened. When the words ran out, he leaned in close, his expression serious. "I need to tell you something," he said. "And it's not easy." Olivia tensed, preparing herself. Daniel took a breath. "Victoria's not just a director. She's the largest private shareholder outside of me. Her vote carries weight, her voice more than it should. And she's been making it known that she sees you as a threat." Olivia blinked, confusion creasing her brow. "I don't want her seat. I just want my own." "I know, but she's not interested in facts. She's interested in control." The fire crackled between them, throwing shadows across his face, making him look both younger and older simultaneously. "I've been protecting you quietly," Daniel continued, "moving projects, shielding press leaks, smoothing whispers. But it's not enough anymore. The next board meeting, they're going to push for a vote not just on you, on me, on the direction of the company." Olivia's throat tightened with realization. "You think they'll ask you to step down? I think Victoria's betting on fear, and she's using you to light the match." Olivia stood abruptly, pacing the worn carpet in front of the fireplace. "This is what I was afraid of," she said, voice trembling with anger and guilt. "Being the thing someone points to when they want to destroy something bigger." Daniel rose too, stepping into her path. "You're not a thing. You're a person I care about deeply, and I won't apologize for that." She turned to him, eyes bright with unshed tears. "But what if this ruins everything you built?" Daniel stepped forward close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Then maybe it wasn't built strong enough to begin with." They stared at each other, two people balanced on the edge of something fragile yet powerful. Finally, Olivia spoke, voice steadier than she expected. "Then we build something new. But not in secret, not in silence." Daniel nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Together." Together, she whispered the word, both a promise and a question. And when they kissed this time, it wasn't cautious or questioning. It was a choice, a declaration, a beginning. Sunday arrived with a thunderstorm, not violent, just steady rain washing over the island as if the landscape itself needed cleansing. Olivia sat on the covered porch of the beach house, blanket draped over her shoulders, hot tea cooling beside her. Lily was inside humming, while coloring the scent of blueberry waffles still floating through the open window. The quiet felt different now, charged like something was shifting beneath the surface of their lives. Daniel was due any minute, coming not for a casual visit, but for a conversation that couldn't wait another day. Olivia heard his car before she saw it, tires crunching on the wet gravel driveway, door shutting with a solid thunk, footsteps careful on the slick, stone steps. When he reached the porch, his eyes found hers immediately. "Hey," he said simply, rain glistening on the shoulders of his coat. She opened the screen door. "Come in before you catch a cold." He followed her into the warm cottage, eyes scanning the space briefly before landing on Lily, who peeked up from her drawing and waved enthusiastically. "Hi, Mr. Daniel." "Hi, sweetheart." He smiled, crouching to her eye level. "You making another masterpiece?" "I'm designing a castle," she explained matter-of-factly, "with secret tunnels and a breakfast room with just pancakes." Daniel nodded with appropriate seriousness. "Sounds like a castle I'd want to live in." Lily tilted her head, studying him with unnerving directness. "Do you like my mom?" There was no hesitation in his answer. "I do. Very much." "Good." Lily nodded with satisfaction. "She likes you too. I can tell." She hums more. Olivia laughed softly, stepping in to rescue him from further 7-year-old interrogation. "All right, little matchmaker. Give us a minute." Lily sighed dramatically but retreated to her room, closing the door with exaggerated care. The moment they were alone, Olivia's smile faded, replaced by the weight of what needed to be discussed. "Let's sit," she suggested, motioning toward the small sofa near the window. They settled close but not quite touching the rain, providing a gentle soundtrack to their conversation. "Daniel, I need to understand what we're stepping into," she began. "Not just emotionally, professionally, real-world consequences." He nodded, his expression serious. "Victoria's not backing down. She's already meeting privately with several board members. The vote isn't just about us, it's about reshaping the company." "She's trying to oust you," Olivia realized aloud. "She's trying to reshape the company in her image. And in her world, there's no room for risk. No room for love that doesn't come with proper credentials and background checks." Olivia looked down at her hands twisting in her lap. "So what happens if she wins?" Daniel hesitated, then answered with quiet certainty. "I walk." Her eyes snapped to his. "What I built Westbrook Solutions to solve problems, not to create cages. If staying means betraying what matters most to me, then it's not worth keeping." Her chest tightened with the weight of his declaration. "Daniel, I didn't come into your life to make you lose everything." He shook his head, reaching for her hand. "You didn't make me lose anything. You reminded me what's real, what's human. That's not a loss. That's the first time in years I've actually felt alive." A crack of thunder rolled outside, closer now. Lily's soft singing drifted through the hallway like background music in a film where everything was about to change. Olivia closed her eyes for a long moment, letting the magnitude of everything settle into her bones. "I believe in you," she said finally, "but I won't let you burn your house down for me." Daniel leaned closer, eyes steady on hers. "Then let's rebuild something better together." She smiled, her eyes wet with emotion. "You keep saying that because I mean it." Later that evening, Sophie arrived with paint samples, snacks, and a folder full of sketches. "We need to talk about the gallery again," she announced, spreading materials across the kitchen table. "The buzz after your show hasn't died down. People want more, including a collector from Charleston." Olivia stared at her friend in disbelief. "A collector?" Sophie nodded, excitement barely contained. "He's offering $5,000 for Stillness After the Storm." Olivia nearly dropped her mug. That piece was therapy. It wasn't for sale. Exactly, Sophie confirmed. "That's why he wants it. Because it's real." Olivia looked to Daniel, who stood in the doorway, watching quietly, letting her navigate this moment without interference. "Take it," he encouraged. "You gave the world something honest. Now let the world give back." She smiled slowly, overwhelmed by the convergence of everything at once. "I don't know what's happening. Everything feels bigger than me." Daniel stepped forward, joining them at the table. "Maybe that's what healing looks like. A life that keeps expanding." As the rain eased outside, Lily came skipping into the room, holding her finished drawing with ceremonial importance. "This one's for both of you," she declared, holding it up proudly. Two figures stood under an umbrella, holding hands, smiling. And in the center of the page, in her careful 7-year-old handwriting, she'd written, "My family." Olivia knelt beside her daughter, voice thick with emotion. "It's beautiful, baby." Daniel knelt too, brushing a finger over the crayon strokes. "I think it's perfect." Sophie wiped her eyes with exaggerated discretion. I'm not crying. You're crying. They all laughed, but it was gentle laughter, the kind that comes when something breaks open carefully and lets light into places that have been dark for too long. The next few days would bring more battles, more meetings, more tension. But in that moment, in that warm little house with the rain fading into mist, Olivia knew something with absolute certainty. She wasn't fighting alone. And for the first time in years, the future didn't frighten her. It invited her forward. The boardroom felt colder than usual. Olivia sat at the far end of the long walnut table, palms flat against the folder containing mock-ups for the Foundation's visual rebrand. Her heartbeat thrummed beneath her ribs like distant thunder. She dressed carefully this morning, charcoal pencil skirt, crisp white blouse, a splash of color in her scarf. Not for attention, but for armor. On her right, Deborah gave her a small nod of support. The HR director had gradually shifted from neutral observer to quiet ally, though Olivia wasn't entirely sure why. Sophie had offered to wait outside the boardroom, just in case, but Olivia had declined. This confrontation belonged to her alone. Victoria sat at the head of the table where Daniel usually presided, pristine as always, flawless chignon white silk blouse, pearl earrings that caught the light with every slight turn of her head. Her expression remained composed, but her eyes betrayed her sharp, vigilant, ready for battle. The room hummed with low conversation until the door opened. Daniel walked in with measured steps, carrying only his phone and a silver pen. His energy filled the space like gravity shifting, pulling attention toward him without demanding it. He didn't look at Olivia, immediately maintaining professional distance as agreed, but she felt his awareness of her presence like warmth from a nearby fire. Let's begin, Victoria announced, voice crisp as fresh linen. We'll open with item number 1, adjustments to the executive structure. I've circulated a motion for board consideration. Olivia stiffened. This was it. No preamble, no discussion. Victoria had gone straight for the throat. I move, Victoria continued, that the board begin the process of selecting a new chief strategy officer and establish clearer boundaries between personal affiliations and professional appointments moving forward. The words sliced through the air like precision instruments. Daniel didn't flinch. He leaned forward, interlocking his fingers on the table. I'd like to speak before this goes to vote. Victoria gave a cool smile. Of course. Daniel stood scanning the faces around the table. Most were older, established executives and investors who had been with Westbrook since its early days. Some looked skeptical, others uncomfortable. A few watched with poorly disguised curiosity, less interested in corporate strategy than in the personal drama unfolding before them. When I built this company, Daniel began, his voice measured but resonant. I was young, relentless, and maybe a little reckless. But I had a purpose to solve real problems, to make life easier for people, not just profitable for shareholders. He paused, letting the words settle. Along the way, I lost some of that. I started measuring value by how clean the spreadsheets looked, how smooth the headlines read. Then he finally looked at Olivia, his gaze direct but gentle. Someone reminded me what people are really made of, what this place should be made of. A silence fell across the room, thick with implications. No one moved, not even Victoria. She came in through the back door, he continued, not because she lacked merit, but because the front door was sealed to women like her, single mothers, artists, survivors. She earned her place 10 times over. But still, she's been made to feel like an intruder in a home she helped furnish. Victoria spoke then, voice flat and controlled. Daniel, no one is disputing Ms. Mitchell's talent. This is about fear, he cut in, a voice sharpening, and control. And I won't sit quietly while the best voice we've had in years is silenced under the pretense of structure. Victoria's eyes narrowed to silvered slits. You're letting your emotions drive your decisions. No, Daniel responded, his posture straightening. I'm letting my values do it, and I'm done pretending those two things can't coexist. He turned toward the rest of the board, addressing them directly. I'm not stepping down, but I am changing how we move forward. Either we become a place that values truth, resilience, and actual innovation, or we become another glass tower with frosted windows and empty hearts. I know where I stand. The question is, do you? The silence that followed pressed against Olivia's ears like deep water. A few board members whispered to each other. One older man with silver hair and kind eyes cleared his throat. I think it's time we evolve, he said quietly. If the company's future looks like her, He nodded toward Olivia. Then I'm willing to bet on it. Others followed hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. When the final vote was tallied, the motion to restructure failed. Victoria's face remained composed, but her fingers tightened around her pen until her knuckles whitened. The meeting continued with other business matters, but Olivia barely heard them. She felt herself breathing fully for the first time in weeks, oxygen reaching parts of her that had been surviving on shallow air. As the room emptied, Daniel approached her quietly. "You okay?" She gave a shaky laugh. "No, but I'm standing. That counts for something." He touched her hand briefly, electricity in even that small contact. "You didn't just stand, you changed the room." Outside, the sky had cleared after morning showers. The rain-washed sidewalks gleamed in the sunlight. Olivia and Daniel walked side by side down the stone steps of the Westbrook building, the steel and glass tower rising behind them like a monument to what they just challenged. "What now?" she asked, voice soft but steady. He looked at her, expression softening from corporate resolve to something more human. "Now we build with intention, with people who know how to fight beautifully." She smiled, the tension of the morning melting from her shoulders. Back at the beach house that evening, Lily had drawn another picture. This one showed a tall building with a rainbow arching above it. At the center stood a tiny figure with a bright yellow dress and a crown made of stars. "Who's that?" Olivia asked, kneeling beside her daughter's creative space. Lily grinned, pride illuminating her features. "You at work, because you're the queen now." Olivia kissed her forehead, holding back tears that weren't sad but weren't quite happy either. Something more complex, a recognition of battles fought and possibly won. Not because the fight was over, but because finally it had been worth it. The next few weeks passed in a blur of quiet victories. Olivia found herself in meetings where her voice wasn't just heard but sought out. Projects she'd helped shape were being referenced as benchmarks for new initiatives. Even Deborah, who once maintained professional distance, started bringing coffee to Olivia's desk with small smiles and comments like, "You've got them paying attention now, oh." But the most unexpected change wasn't at the office, it was at home. Lily had started drawing stories, whole pages of characters and places, stitched together in crayon swirls and pencil outlines. Olivia kept them all, taping them above the kitchen sink along the hallway inside her planner. They were reminders that growth didn't have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it bloomed quietly in the corners of ordinary days. One Friday evening, Daniel invited her to the beach house again, not for crisis management or strategic planning, but simply for dinner. Just the two of them. Olivia stood before her closet for 15 full minutes, rejecting outfit after outfit. She wasn't trying to impress him, at least that's what she told herself. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just dinner. It was a step forward, perhaps the real one. When she arrived, the lights inside the cottage glowed soft and warm. Candles flickered in the windows, casting dancing shadows across the porch. The door opened before she could knock. Daniel stood there, sleeves rolled up, an apron dusted with flour tied around his waist. She burst out laughing at the unexpected domesticity. "I thought you were ordering in." "I considered it," he admitted, stepping back to let her enter. "But then I remembered what you said the first time we met." She tilted her head, genuinely puzzled. "Which was that you didn't trust people who couldn't cook a decent meal without a microwave." She grinned, the memory surfacing. "That sounds like me. I took it personally." The kitchen smelled like rosemary, garlic, and something rich and earthy baking in the oven. A small table had been pulled near the fireplace, two places already set, and soft jazz played from a speaker tucked discreetly on a shelf. "You did all this?" she asked, touched by the effort behind the gesture. He shrugged, but his eyes revealed the meaning beneath the casual movement. "I've been trying to learn what peace looks like. Turns out, it looks like setting a table with your own hands." They ate slowly, sharing stories between bites. Olivia told him about the time Lily tried to mail herself to Disney World in a cardboard box. Daniel confessed he had once faked an allergy to get out of a networking gala and ended up in the emergency room after accidentally eating the exact thing he'd claimed to be allergic to. They laughed more that night than either had in months. After dinner, they moved to the couch, a fire crackling low behind them. Olivia curled her legs beneath her fingers, wrapped around a glass of wine. Daniel leaned back, his gaze steady on hers. "I keep thinking about that first day," he said, "when you showed up for the interview looking like a drowned cat." Olivia smiled at the memory. "And you stood at that window like it was already yours, even though I could tell you weren't sure if you belonged." I wasn't sure, she admitted. He countered, his voice softening. I didn't know what it meant back then, but something shifted. You didn't just challenge the room, you changed it. And now I can't imagine walking through a single door without wondering if you should be on the other side. Olivia's breath caught the simple truth of his words, landing more powerfully than any elaborate declaration. You're not just important to the company, he continued. You're important to me, and I know we've built this slowly, carefully. But Olivia, I'm ready for whatever's next with you, with Lily, with all of it. She swallowed, hard emotions rising in her throat. I'm not asking you to rush, he added, holding her gaze. I just needed you to know where I stand. Olivia set her glass down, reached for his hand. I'm not afraid of the next chapter, she said, but I need to write it in a way that feels like me. No headlines, no whispers behind boardroom doors, just us. Real, unfiltered. Daniel nodded. Then let's do that. No pressure, no plans, just one page at a time. They sat in the quiet comfort of understanding for a long while. Later, when she stood to leave, he walked her to the door. She paused on the threshold, fingers resting on the doorframe. I'm not used to having someone show up for me like this, she admitted. I'm still learning how to let it in. You're doing just fine, he assured her, and I'm not going anywhere. Olivia stepped out into the night air, the scent of salt and earth lingering around her. She turned back one last time. I believe you. He smiled, the expression reaching his eyes. Good, because I believe in you. She walked down the path toward her car's stars beginning to blink awake above the treetops. The world feeling finally like it was hers to move through, not hide from. And somewhere deep inside, something unlocked. Not everything had to be fought for. Some things like love, like healing, could simply be received. Seattle's spring air had begun to soften, hanging heavy with the scent of flowering trees and the promise of longer days. Olivia stood outside Sophie's gallery with her friends, staring up at the fresh sign they'd just finished hanging, Mitchell and Stevens Gallery Stories in Color. The windows displayed Olivia's paintings alongside prints from other local artists, and in a special corner, Lily's crayon masterpieces, matted and framed as if they belonged beside works that had sold for thousands. This wasn't just an art space. It was a dream manifested, a declaration of value beyond corporate metrics. Sophie nudged her with an elbow. Still feels like a dream. Olivia nodded slowly. A good one. But I keep waiting to wake up. You're not dreaming, Sophie insisted, eyes sweeping the storefront proudly. You're building, and it's beautiful. The grand opening was scheduled for the following weekend, but local press had already started buzzing. A Seattle arts magazine had run a feature titled Single Mom Turns Pain into Power, The Unlikely Rise of Olivia Mitchell. Daniel had sent her 3 copies with a sticky note. One for Lily's scrapbook, one for your wall, one for the boardroom. He'd been steady since that night at the cottage. Not grand or flashy, just present, always calling, always asking questions that made her feel seen rather than studied. Their connection had deepened through shared silences, exchanged glances, and the gentle confidence that came from knowing he wasn't just there for her, he was there with her. But even in peace, shadows appeared. One of them arrived in the form of a voicemail Olivia received while picking Lily up from school. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, vaguely familiar. Hi, this is Jennifer Hughes. I'm calling regarding Daniel Westbrook. I believe we may need to talk. Olivia sat frozen in her car, Lily chattering in the back seat about spelling tests and playground politics, while that name curled like smoke around her heart. Hughes, the family Daniel never mentioned, without changing the subject, the rival company CEO Victoria had allegedly been negotiating with. She played the message again later that night after Lily was asleep. Daniel was on his way over. Sophie called, just as Olivia was about to delete the voicemail. You good, her friend asked, intuitive as always. Define good. That's what I thought. Spill. Olivia explained about the message, its tone, the 1,000 questions rising like old ghosts through the floorboards of her carefully constructed new life. She said she wants to talk, Olivia finished. No details, just that. Could be nothing, Sophie offered without conviction. But it's something, Olivia countered. I can feel it. Sophie paused. Do you want to know? Olivia looked out the window at the street lamp, casting long shadows over her porch steps. I want to be prepared. I'm tired of being surprised by the past. When Daniel arrived, he brought lemon tarts from their favorite bakery and 2 worn paperbacks, one for Lily, that he said had dragons. but no scary parts. One he insisted Olivia had to read because it made me feel brave when I was 10. She loved him a little more in that moment and hated the storm brewing between them even more. They sat side by side on her small porch swing. The night air was warm, cicadas humming in the maple tree overhead. Olivia didn't ease into it. Jennifer Hughes called me. Daniel's body tensed beside her, not dramatically, but enough for her to feel the shift. What did she say? She wants to talk. She didn't say why. He looked away, jaw tight. She's Richard Hughes' wife. I should have guessed they'd try this angle. I figured, Olivia said quietly. She's also the family's PR director, isn't she? She's their fixer, Daniel corrected. She only calls when something needs spinning. Olivia studied his profile in the dim porch light. Do I need to be spun? His eyes flicked back to hers. No, but they might think you're dangerous. To who? To their control, to their planned merger. The silence between them lengthened, filled with unspoken questions. Why didn't you tell me more about them? Olivia asked finally, her voice soft but direct. Because every time I think I've escaped their orbit, they find a way to drag me back in. She touched his hand gently. I'm not afraid of your past. I just want to know where I stand. Daniel exhaled slowly. I didn't build walls to keep you out. I built them because everything I used to let in nearly destroyed me. Olivia nodded, understanding more than he realized. And I've spent years thinking love was something I had to survive. He turned to her fully. We don't have to survive this. We just have to stand through it. The next morning, she called Jennifer back. They agreed to meet at a cafe near the waterfront, the kind of place with pressed tablecloths and too many forks, neutral territory, designed to intimidate through refinement. Jennifer Hughes arrived, looking like a magazine cover, tailored blazer, subtle jewelry voice, modulated to convey authority without aggression. I wanted to meet face to face, she began after they'd ordered coffee. Neither would likely finish. There's a shareholders meeting next month. The Hughes family will be watching closely. Olivia folded her hands on the table. I'm not part of the company's ownership structure. Not legally, Jennifer replied with precision. But publicly you've become significant. You're a narrative now, and the Hughes family doesn't appreciate surprises. Olivia held her gaze steadily. I'm not a scandal. Jennifer smiled thinly. That depends on the ending. Olivia leaned forward slightly. Let me make one thing clear. I didn't come into Daniel's life for money or press or position. I came because he looked at me like I was already whole. Jennifer blinked just once, the only crack in her professional veneer. Olivia stood, confidence flowing through her veins like a river finding its path. I suggest you prepare the Hughes family for a new kind of story, she said quietly. One that doesn't end with a woman being erased. As she walked out, the weight on her chest finally lifted. Not because the conflict was over, but because she knew now she wasn't a guest in this life. She belonged in it. Olivia sat on the edge of her bed, the gallery invitation trembling slightly in her hands. Gold foil letters and on soft ivory cardstock, elegant, expensive official. Beneath the carefully chosen typeface was her name front and center. The grand opening was only 3 days away, and every part of her life suddenly felt exposed and illuminated by a spotlight she had both craved and feared. She could feel it pressing in the expectation, the whispers, the judgment lingering in hallways both public and private. It wasn't the art that scared her. It wasn't even the attention. It was what came after. Would people see the real story beneath the canvas? Would they see her or just the version others had painted? Daniel walked in quietly, holding 2 mugs of chamomile tea. He placed one on the nightstand and knelt down in front of her. You've been quiet, he observed. Olivia looked down at him. I'm trying not to unravel. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear with gentle fingers. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to show up. She smiled faintly. That's always been the hardest part. He kissed her knuckles, slow and deliberate. You've already done the impossible. Everything from here is legacy. She exhaled shakily, eyes meeting his. Promise me something. Anything. If it all falls apart, if the gallery fails, if people talk, if I freeze up in front of the press, I won't leave, he said, cutting her off before she could finish. Not for any of that. Not ever. She blinked back a tear. You keep saying things like that. Because they're true. Olivia leaned forward, arresting her forehead against his. In the quiet of the room where nothing was expected of her except to breathe and be loved, she felt something soften. Not weakness, but the release of armor no longer needed. 2 days later, the gallery buzzed with energy. Strings of warm lights glowed overhead, casting a flattering glow on the artwork and the growing crowd. The scent of fresh flowers and white wine mingled in the air as local press community leaders, friends, and even a few skeptical Westbrook board members made their appearance. Victoria among them, her eyes sweeping the space as if still measuring its value in columns of figures rather than emotion. Olivia stood in a deep blue dress that Sophie had insisted on her curls pinned back her smile steady, but her heart thundering. This was the culmination of everything: her art, her journey, her new beginning. Mommy Lily's voice broke through the crowd as she ran toward her mother, arms wide. Olivia scooped her up, grounding herself in the weight of her daughter's arms around her neck. "You look like a painting," Lily whispered in her ear. Olivia laughed. "That's your magic at work. I hung your sunflower series next to the front door." Lily beamed with 7-year-old pride. Sophie arrived moments later, radiant in a coral-wrapped dress that complemented her confident stride. She hugged Olivia fiercely. "Look at you owning the room. I'm faking it really well." Sophie leaned in conspiratorially. "They don't know that, and they never will." Daniel stepped beside her, then his hand finding the small of her back with natural ease. "Ready?" he asked. "Not even a little," she admitted. He grinned. "Good. That means it matters." The gallery director tapped her glass gently and the room began to quiet. All eyes turned toward Olivia. She stepped forward, fingers brushing the hem of her dress, and inhaled courage. "Thank you," she began, her voice finding its strength. "For showing up tonight, for art, for story, for heart." She looked around the room, taking in the faces, some familiar, some new, all waiting. My journey to this gallery wasn't traditional. I didn't come from connections or art school or grant money. I came from late nights at a design desk and early mornings getting a little girl dressed for school. I came from loss, from love, from learning how to keep going even when I didn't know where I was headed. The room was silent, attentive. "Art saved me," she continued. "But more than that, people did. People who saw me before I could see myself. People who reminded me that sometimes you have to be broken open to let the light in." Her voice caught slightly, and she paused. Daniel stepped closer without interrupting his presence, anchoring her. "This space isn't just about beauty," she said, finding her rhythm again. "It's about healing, about stories that never made it to the surface, and about the courage it takes to be the story when the world only wants the picture." She stepped back as applause rose gentle at first, then swelling into something warm and affirming. Later, after the speeches and handshakes had blurred into background noise, Olivia stood outside the gallery doors, the cool evening air soothing her flushed skin. Daniel joined her, slipping his hand into hers. "You are incredible," he said, his voice low with admiration. She looked up at the stars barely visible through the city lights. "I'm tired. You should be, but you were clear, powerful." They stood in comfortable silence, watching guests trickle out, watching the windows glow behind them like beacons. "You know," Daniel said after a moment, "the Hughes family saw the magazine article." Olivia tensed slightly. "Did they say anything?" He nodded. "Jennifer told me I look happier in those photos than I have in years. That maybe they had underestimated you." Olivia raised an eyebrow. That sounded dangerously close to a compliment. "She said you reminded her of someone." "My mother." Olivia turned to him, surprised by this unexpected connection. "She was quiet," he explained, "but fierce, gentle but uncompromising. The kind of woman who changed the temperature of a room just by existing in it." Olivia swallowed hard against unexpected emotion. "I would have liked to meet her." "I think you have," he whispered. She leaned into him, resting her head against his chest, letting the sound of his heartbeat settle her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Questions would rise and fall, but tonight, the world was hers. And for the first time, she wasn't just surviving it, she was writing it. A warm spring breeze curled through the open windows of Olivia's new studio. The sun cast long golden streaks across the wooden floors where Lily's laughter echoed from another room. There were still unopened boxes stacked in corners, new brushes scattered across her desk, and a fresh canvas waiting on the easel. But everything else felt settled. It had been 3 months since the gallery opened, 3 months since Olivia had finally stopped waiting for the ground to give out beneath her. 3 months since she'd stopped wondering if she was enough, because she was. Lily ran into the room in mismatched socks, her curl bouncing wildly with each step. Mama, Daniel said he wants to show us something. Olivia turned from the easel, brushing a smudge of blue from her cheek. What is it this time? Another one of his surprises. He said it's big. He said you have to see it with your heart. Olivia laughed softly. Well, in that case, she followed her daughter through the gallery's back door, now connected to their living space by a short hallway. Sophie had insisted on installing a permanent wall titled Unseen Stories, where local artists could display work that might otherwise go unnoticed. Victoria Westbrook's name had been added to the donor plaque beneath Olivia's, a peace offering made without words but understood by both women. The doors to the side courtyard stood open sunlight and the scent of honeysuckle wrapping around them like an embrace. Daniel waited at the far end beside a wooden archway covered in climbing roses just beginning to bloom. He looked nervous, which made Olivia slow her approach. What is this? She asked, taking in the unfamiliar structure. Daniel gave her a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes yet, layered with vulnerability and hope. I bought the house. Olivia blinked in confusion. What house? He motioned toward the edge of the courtyard. Beyond it, tucked under a canopy of maple trees, stood a modest craftsman-style home with a wraparound porch and weathered green shutters. The one across from the gallery, he explained. The one you said felt like it had a heartbeat. She stared at him, trying to read between his words. I didn't buy it for me, Daniel continued, stepping toward her. I bought it for us. For you, for Lily, for everything we've built and everything we're still building. Her breath caught in her throat. You said once that you needed to write your story your way, he said gently. So I wanted to give you a place to do that, without pressure, without expectation. Just love, just choice. Lily tugged on Olivia's hand. Can we live there, Mama? It has a swing on the porch. Olivia looked from her daughter's wide, hopeful eyes to the man who had rewritten her view of love, not with grand promises, but with presence, with patience, with the kind of loyalty that didn't need declarations to be true. She walked toward him, each step deliberate. When she reached him, she whispered his name, a question and an answer in those two syllables. Daniel took her hand. Olivia, I don't need a ceremony or a title to know what we are. But if you're ready, if it feels right, I'd like to ask. He paused, reaching into his pocket. From it, he withdrew a small velvet box. Inside was no diamond, just a thin gold band, simple and smooth, engraved with two words, come home. Tears filled her eyes. I don't want perfect, he said softly. I just want real. I want dinners on the porch and unfinished paintings and mornings where we're still figuring it out. Olivia took the ring, holding it in her palm like it was made of something more precious than metal. I don't know how to be anyone's wife, she admitted, voice thick with emotion. Daniel smiled. Good, I don't want anyone's wife. I want you. She laughed through her tears, slipping the ring onto her finger. Then let's write this chapter. Behind them, Lily clapped wildly. Are we getting married today? Can I wear glitter shoes? Olivia scooped her daughter up, holding her close. One day, baby, but today, we're just saying yes. Later that evening, after the courtyard had emptied and the stars began to peek through the clouds, Olivia sat on the porch of what would soon be their home. Her sketchbook open in her lap, pencil moving across the page with renewed purpose. The house wasn't fancy, it needed paint. The floors creaked, the garden was overgrown, but it was theirs. And more importantly, it was a beginning. Daniel joined her, setting 2 mugs of tea on the wide porch railing. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that spoke volumes. You remember what you said at the very beginning? Olivia asked quietly. Daniel looked over. I said a lot of things. You said sometimes all it takes is a hug. He smiled, remembering Lily's fearless embrace that first day. She didn't just change my life, she gave me one. Olivia reached for his hand. The wind picked up slightly, brushing through the trees, rustling leaves like pages turning. A new chapter had begun, not because of a group or a title or even a proposal, but because 2 broken people had stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be present. And in doing so, they gave each other the most radical kind of love, a place to begin again, together.